Welcome to Not Just Ads, the show where B2B brands discover how creator-led content drives pipeline, builds trust, and grows long-term brand equity. Each episode, we speak with business leaders, founders, and creators who are defining their categories. I'm your host, Marcus Sherwin, and this is the creator economy for B2B. Great. So welcome to the show. I'm joined by Declan Mulkeen. Declan Mulkeen is a CMO for Strategic ABM, an agency focusing on marketing ABM for a number of different clients globally. Declan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Marcus. Thanks for having me on the show.
Great. So yeah, Declan, maybe you could just take us back in terms of like when you started really seeing like content in terms of from creator-led content as a pillar for your agency in terms of not just like from a marketing channel, but also as a key business driver for your agency as well. Maybe you could just tell us how that came about and how it's integrated now into your overall organization.
Yeah, good question, really. I was just literally this morning, I was on LinkedIn, as most people are when they're having a coffee in the morning, and I came across a post all about HubSpot and the strategy. I'm not sure if you saw that post this morning, but the strategy that their senior executive team have been taking, including Dharmesh, who's one of the co-founders.
Yep.
And their kind of executive team have gone really heavy into kind of personal posts and sharing their kind of building stories, etc. And it just made me think, because I've been on the HubSpot journey now I think I started at least 10 or 15 years ago working with HubSpot, and that kind of whole inbound, that kind of methodology of generating content. People come to your website, you convert them on a landing page, and off you go. But that doesn't work anymore, right? That kind of creating, or doesn't work as well, I'd rather say. And so that kind of transition from that kind of inbound that all kind of B2B marketers got behind. If you think about the evolution of marketing from, key account marketing through to kind of let's all do SEO. Let's all stuff our pages of keywords. And then we move to inbound as the latest thing. Let's get HubSpot and start creating content, and that'll bring everybody in, and we'll just sit there answering the phone all day. So I think that evolution, the logical next evolution was, well, actually people want to, build that trust first.
Yeah.
And I think what we've definitely seen in the agency, and I've seen personally with my own personal experience of building content and creating content and engaging in different communities online and offline, is that content, it has greater resonance, a greater voice when it's coming from an individual rather than coming from a company. And I think, we were talking before, and you've seen so many of those posts, at least I have, saying, Gary V, 5 million followers or 15 million followers, his company, 250,000 followers. So people are clearly much more engaged with the individual rather than the company. And you can see that from the content that everyone is putting out, or most people are putting out these days. It's being led by the individual, by the CEO, by the CMO, by the CTO, the CFO. There's some great CFOs doing some amazing work as well. And I think that's the evolution that we've definitely seen. And with our customers and where we help them, it's part of what we do is definitely that kind of what we call executive engagement, helping those executives to have a voice, to share their thinking and to build their businesses in public.
There's maybe some people listening to the show in terms of like that executive presence, like what are kind of 3 things that you would say to a company? Like they know that there's a value there. They know that this is kind of where the industry is heading and there's an opportunity there to build trust. Like what would be the 3 things that you would say to an organization if you were talking to them in order to get started?
In terms of getting individuals within their company to start?
Yeah, exactly. To get them on board. Yeah,
it's very hard actually, because people are, I talk to lots of marketers, very, very senior marketers in very, very big companies. And some of them say to me, I'm not sure what to say, or they say, I'm embarrassed, or I don't want to make a mistake, or I don't want to say something that then comes against me. And so there's definitely a fear in the market with people not sure because they're feeling, it's when you start to write, you're exposing yourself to a wider audience, right? And obviously if you've got a brand behind you, you're representing a company, then you're obviously thinking not just about you as an individual, but you're thinking about yourself and how you represent your company. So I think to get over those obstacles, the first thing that we do with our customers is we say, let's try to identify a couple of people in the organization that will be a very good fit for this. Either they're already doing it and maybe we can help them to accelerate it. And so we look to see, well, which people are actively engaged on LinkedIn, which people are already writing, which people are already sharing content. Perhaps we can actually work with them. And that's number one. So try to find a couple of advocates, candidates who would be a good fit. Number two, we try to, with most companies, try to say, look, the leadership have to lead. So, there's an old Chinese proverb, which is a fish rots from the head down. So unless the head is healthy, then the rest of the body is going to be unhealthy. So if somebody in leadership, be it the CEO, be it the CTO, CFO, if somebody within that area that we're working with a customer, if they can start to lead on this as well and share their story, going back to what I said before, Marcus, about building in public, that's a very compelling message to the organization to say, hey, we're not just asking you to help and to start building your personal brands, but look what the CEO's doing, look what the CFO's doing. They're actually building in public, and look at the response. Look how the market's engaging. Look at these anecdotal evidence of people talking about the CEO, him or her being invited onto podcasts, because suddenly it's a domino effect. You start to write, you start to build that writing muscle.
Yeah.
You start to build your personal brand. That's associated then with the company. That people then look at you, Marcus, and look at LinkedIn. Okay, right. Oh, that's interesting. So you build that kind of relationship between you as an individual, you as an employee of a company, and the offer that you have. So that's generally our advice: is start with a couple of people who've already got some activity, or people who are really, really willing to take part. Try to make sure that the CEO or somebody very, very senior is also involved, and then try to build some communication channel, be it Slack or whatever you use, to share the good news, to share the evidence, to say, hey, look, so-and-so said this, or I went to a meeting and so-and-so said, hey, you don't need to introduce yourself. I know you. I've been following you on LinkedIn for ages. Yeah. And I think, this happens to my wife, who's, posts on LinkedIn every day. Yeah. She's got a nutrition business and a health business. She's been doing it for about a year and a half, and, bringing up a couple of very small children as well. And, she started now going to live events and HR events and, all kinds of stuff. She was in Madrid a couple of days ago and people were walking up to her and shouting her name. Yeah. That, it's a bit weird, right? Because they know her. Yeah. And they've either commented on her posts or engaged on her posts or just been consuming what we call lurkers, people who consume but don't show their face. Sure. And so people have just been saying, hey, Sarah, I love what you do. It's so nice to meet you in public, in person rather. Yeah. So the impact is much wider than what people actually think. Yeah, definitely. For you as a CMO, Strategic ABM, was there like a moment where like a tipping point in terms of where you found that like, actually this has serious traction and potential? I know you mentioned the podcast kind of started during COVID and stuff, but was it something gradual, or was there like kind of a moment and you were like, okay, this, not just the podcast, but the sharing online, the consistency that you started to see, actually, this is really having a business impact for us? Yeah. I mean, like I said, I've been using LinkedIn. I don't know. I'm sure if I logged into LinkedIn, it'll say member since whenever. I think it's 15 years or whatever. But I don't think, if I think about the history of how I used it, yes, I used it, but I was using it much more what I was saying before. I was just putting company content out through it, right? Yeah. Which has a very minimal impact. Unless you're OpenAI or ChatGPT or whatever, and you're publishing something that everybody wants to know about, with the greatest respect in the world to the agency where I work or anybody else and the companies that they work at, people don't necessarily want to kind of follow that kind of company thread. They're much more interested in learning from you. And I suppose the change that I saw in my own work and my own relationship with online communities was probably about, like I said, probably with COVID, around that time when, you're stuck at home, your only avenue to communicate with your customers and with the market is through your laptop, right? You can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. You can't, go to an event or go for a couple of drinks with a customer. You can't do that. So then you start to build a relationship online. Hence why I built the podcast. Hence why I started to kind of build a community online. Hence why I started to share a lot more personal, I mix it up, personal stories, stories about building an agency, stories about the marketing that I do, and just contrarian views. My wife probably says I'm quite contrarian. I like to go against opinion. So I kind of share ideas that I think go against and generate a bit of debate as well, really. So that's what I've seen, is that switch from company to individual and then to sharing stories. Because ultimately, the people who I follow on LinkedIn, they're a few steps ahead of me. Yeah. So I'm following them to learn from them. But equally, there are people who are a few steps behind me who are looking to learn. Perhaps they don't want to learn from the person who's ahead of me, because that's too much of a leap. But they want to learn from me, and then that's how education works, really.
Yeah, for sure. How do you find, say, what would I say, a difference between, say, the personal versus the professional? Like, I know that LinkedIn now as well, people share more personable stories and so on. But what are you thinking about when you post? Are you thinking about an interesting story for your audience? Are you thinking about your ICP? Are you thinking about, okay, look, this might be useful? Or what do you think? What goes through your mind before or when you create a post or when you plan to create content and share it online?
Well, the funny thing is, the more I think about it, the worse the posts perform.
Yeah.
And I've sat there and wrote a post and pressed publish and thought, this is going to be the absolute, amazing. This is going to fly. I mean, I'm going to drop a message to Marcus and say, look at this amazing LinkedIn post. And whenever I think that, those posts always die.
Yeah.
They die like a flower in the desert. I mean, they just die.
Yeah.
And I actually find that when I'm much more kind of like writing on the fly, or I write a lot of posts when I'm actually out walking the dog, and because ideas come to me, and I then literally I might sit down, or I might just come back to the house, and I've written a little voice note on my iPhone, and that spurred the thought.
Sure.
Because I think that the more you try and the more you think, it's actually, I find it doesn't work really. So going back to your point around personal, I think, you've got to mix it up really. The content, a lot of people recommend to kind of have some content pillars.
Yeah.
So I teach a lot of people how to do social selling as well. So I generally say people, be known for at least two things.
Yeah.
So what do you want to be known for? Well, okay, I want to be known for, in my case, I want to be known for account-based marketing, ABM, which is what my agency does. So that's important. I want to be known for somebody in general around B2B marketing and some of the kind of trends and what's important. And then I think the third thing I want to be known for is probably a little bit of personality about my life and about the fact that, this kind of, guy who, like, just like yourself, Marcus, we're a foreigner in a foreign land, right?
Yeah.
So there's a story to be told there as well. Which is
for sure.
I think that you want to build those pillars, and then you want to write around those pillars. So generally once a week, I'll do a personal post. Generally, I'll do one post about the company and the work I do. And then generally the other 2 or 3 posts that I do in a week are generally much more about thought leadership, some thinking, some observation I've had, a conversation I had with a customer. I try to share that really. So I think my advice to everyone is ask yourself the question, through my LinkedIn profile, what do people think I am? What am I known for? There's one lady based in London who's got this 200,000 or 300,000 followers now. But I was following her when she had a couple of thousand followers, and she's just known now for being like the face of personal branding.
Yeah.
So that she's got that. So when you see her name, you just think personal branding. So you want people to associate you with what you do.
What's her name? Do you recall?
Her first name's Amelia.
Okay.
She's one of the big forces now.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
She has this tagline which I'm not sure how LinkedIn let her get away with, but she says something like, effing just post.
Okay.
So her message is stop worrying about it so much and just post, which goes back to my point about you've got to start to post, you've got to start to write, you've got to start to expose yourself, and don't be so worried because I think ultimately people are concerned, oh God, if I post it, but these posts will disappear.
Yeah.
Only you remember that they're going to disappear. So don't, if you have one like, and that's from your mother, that's okay. Just, keep posting.
Yeah. Just a follow-up question on that. So for example, let's say you're an organization and you know that there's a lot of value here in getting your team to post. And, we're in the era now of B2B. It has evolved a lot since kind of digitalization and then kind of gated white papers and so on, and driving leads to those. And now it's more, you're building trust, you're educating your ICPs and so on. Like, what should companies be thinking about? In one side, they know that there's an opportunity here, but in another side, they're conscious and they're worried about like the brand and how employees will talk about the company and so on. What do you think are steps that, like, whether it's a CMO or whether it's even CEO led, like what should they do to encourage their team and their organization to be more present on LinkedIn to kind of connect opportunity?
Well, it's a couple of ways, really. One way I've seen with some companies is they make sure they hire people who are already active on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I've seen that with a couple of companies, that part of their recruitment process is to make sure to look, they look at, okay, psychometric test, whatever they go through. And then one of them is, has this person got a presence on LinkedIn? And that's one, if they don't, that's one of the criteria for not hiring people.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting criteria. That's, not everyone can do that. But I think ultimately it depends on the culture of the company, right? The culture of the company. And going back to the point I mentioned around HubSpot and their leadership and all the people in their different departments, product marketing, the CTO, the CMO, the two founders, they are incredibly active. So in a funny kind of way, that generates this culture of it's okay. Yeah. And I think if you've got to have that culture in the organization of it's okay. And obviously, if you have these more kind of tighter, regimented, controlled, perhaps finance companies that are thinking about the financial authorities and this and that, maybe you have to have some more ring fence around what you do and how you do it. And I think there's probably a little bit more reticence in that area to do that. But generally speaking, I think, make sure that the culture is there. Make sure you allow people. I've come across companies that actually give people time in their day and say, hey guys, everyone's got a half an hour every day in their diary to do social. Yeah. So you actually say, we're paying you to do this. It's your time. It's your platform, because obviously LinkedIn is a personal platform. But we believe in this so much that we want you to use some of the time that you spend at work doing this. Yeah. So you build a framework. I've seen companies do some great things around competitions and rewards. I've seen companies, have the best post of the month or whatever. And then, they reward people with whatever, a day off work or different prizes. I think that's a great way to build a little bit of competition, a little bit of, gamification, which is a great way for companies to kind of get people to start thinking about it. And then, like I said before, if you can have that culture, if you can build some competition and some energy around it, then by sharing, hey, look at Marcus, look at that, and look at this post, look what happened. He got invited to that podcast with Joe Rogan, and now he's left us and he's gone to New York. But just sharing those great anecdotes and sharing the evidence, because ultimately what you'll find is that the impact will be, first of all, digital. Comments. Then it will move out from that into invitations to events, invitations to podcasts. People will send an inquiry, and the source of the inquiry will say Marcus's podcast, and then or Marcus's LinkedIn. And suddenly there's an energy in the company to say, "Wow, this is amazing. Let's all do it."
Yeah. So your thing would be like share the wins in terms of, and that will encourage or ignite other people to kind of see like, look, there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, and ultimately, look, if there's 100 people in the company, if you manage to get 20 people doing it, that would be unbelievable.
Yeah.
No,
You're
not going to convince everybody. You can't. Yeah. You can't. How much you try. You can take the horse to water, but you can't make it drink, and that's okay. And there shouldn't be any unnecessary pressure on anybody, because some people don't want to, and that's perfectly fine. But you will find people and pockets of people who really start to build that muscle, as I call it, and then they start to enjoy it.
Yeah. What about from when you think of like your business yourselves? Is there any like examples that whereby, sharing online, being present there, that it led to like, say, unexpected conversations with like targeted accounts or customers that you had on your radar, but it just kind of, you spoke before about dark social, about kind of like a lot of things that are not tracked in an attribution model. But can you give us some examples of like unexpected cases whereby you were like, wow, this actually just came true, whether it's the podcast or whether it was sharing online, like something that was a big wins for your business?
Yeah, well, I've done several posts on LinkedIn about this, and I've actually done copy and paste from our HubSpot, because we obviously have a field in our inquiry forms, which is how did you hear about us, and it's a mandatory. We make it mandatory. Yeah. We ask people for very little information, but we ask them, how did you hear about us? Yeah. And I've done several posts over the last few years, and it comes back saying Declan's podcast or content or interview that, people say, well, the interview he did on another person's podcast, or LinkedIn post, and we use kind of tracking URLs and everything. Yeah. We've got so many examples of that, of where the content we put out there, the conversations we're having. I'm involved in lots of sales calls as well, with potential customers that come on. And I was on a call the other day with a very well-known, very, very well-known large company, and there was about 6 or 7 marketers on the call, and the person who was leading from their side, he said, yeah, I came across you guys because I've been following Declan and his podcast for ages, and I just love it. So, and that's just testament to the podcast, to the guests, to the conversations, to the subject. But then equally, people say, I've had people who've become customers of our agency who've said to me, the content that you as an agency have been producing has helped me to get my job.
Yeah, which is
And I hear that actually what we do in the educational content that we put out there has helped people to either improve their career or get a promotion or move from perhaps marketing into account-based marketing, which is a different discipline, through the work that we've been doing, because I think ultimately, going back to your first question, Marcus, about how the evolution has gone on, the fact that we're out there creating content, sharing it, trying to create content that helps people, ultimately, that whole adage about, the 95% are not in market, 5% are. And, people say, well, don't focus on the 5%, focus on the 95%. So we as an agency, we firmly focused on the 95% because by educating, by helping, by showing what good looks like, then there'll come a point when they'll think account-based marketing, they'll think, oh, strategic ABM.
Yeah, definitely. It's a brand play in a way. No, you're priming them for future buyers when they come in market, then that you're top of mind regularly on a platform. Do they have a similar strategy?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, if you answer the question about the ICP, the ideal customer profile, a narrow group of customers and potential customers that they know they can help. And then you build a reputation, you build your experience, you build those relationships, and then you can then amplify that out into other companies that are very similar to your best fit customers. So going back to the content piece, so if you're actually able to show them what's over the horizon, what actually is in the future that perhaps they can't quite see yet, and if you can start sharing that, then that's a way to actually engage with that ICP, with those target accounts, in a way that starts to make that relationship between you as an individual, representing a company, the content that you produce and the education that you provide. So I think that alignment between ICP, challenges, what you know from your customers, what you're learning, what you're able to share, and how that can help people is great. And I think that's, when I look at, our agency, he just shares his thinking and his thoughts on creativity. So he has not boring B2B Thursdays. So he comes up with these ideas about blending two brands together and what would happen if there was a joint partnership between Dulux Paint and Kit Kat or whatever. So, because that's, ultimately a big part of what we do in marketing, as you know, Marcus, is creativity. And when there is so much competition, how can you cut through the noise and how can your message land with your ICP? And one of the ways is amazing creative. So by our head of creative just doing his own thing. He doesn't take any lead from me. He doesn't take any lead from the company. He rarely publishes anything about the company. He just publishes things about creativity, and that works marvelously.
Yeah, for sure. What you're looking at a lot of different ABM clients running ABM. Anything that really is forward thinking in terms of what you see? Any companies that stand out? I won't ask you to name the companies, but any particular type of ABM campaigns that you think like these guys are really kind of like ahead of the trend. This is something like that's quite new and it's having a business impact. Can you think of any examples?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that the hot topics at the moment in the world of account-based marketing is obviously AI is a hot topic, and it's a hot topic in everybody's business, I'm guessing. But how can you use AI? Because I think ultimately, perhaps one of the things that people have said about account-based marketing over the years is that it takes time and that it's labor intensive. But because the prize is so great, because you're looking to either grow your most important existing customers or win very large deals, then therefore you can argue the prize is so great, the effort is worth it. That's fine. But what AI allows you to do is to accelerate a lot of that work, a lot of the insights work, the research work, the data collation work, etc. So some of the companies that we're seeing do some, innovative work at the moment is how they're using AI to perhaps accelerate the great work they've already been doing, but just to accelerate it, to allow them. I was reading one customer case study the other day, and then, they were doing maybe 20, 30 accounts in a very, very personalized way. But now they're able to, with the same team, they're now able to do 3 or 4 times as many accounts without any drop in quality or drop in level of personalization. So I think the AI piece is a great one, and we've definitely seen that with our customers, how they're embracing AI and thinking about the different of the ABM journey and how they can use AI to accelerate certain parts. That's number one. Personalization, as I mentioned, is really key, but not dummy personalization or creepy personalization, but real personalization that says, hey, Marcus, you work for LinkedIn. The challenge you're having at the moment is engaging your customers. Right. Okay. That's what's keeping you awake at night. Well, let's we can talk to you about that in a way that you say, well, actually, they're talking to me. They're actually realized the pain that's, literally keeping you awake at night. So having personalization and in a way that talks to you as an individual and you as a company is really important, whether it's your challenge, your agenda, what you're trying to solve, how you're trying to tie your department into your corporate objectives, sustainability, or whatever it is. So I think personalization is one. AI is the other hot topic, and I think just the third one where I see a lot of our best customers doing it is how they're going from, let's call it, how they're going from pilot to how they're actually making it part of the fabric of their organization. So account-based marketing previously was kind of a little bit siloed. Oh, these guys do account-based marketing, but now it's much more center in most organizations. The best organizations have it in the middle, saying, because our accounts, our customers are the most important thing that we have. We do the best for these customers. So a lot of work around lifetime value, having customers for life is a big piece of what we're seeing now. Less about short-term wins, much more about how can we have a customer that is a customer for life.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Any predictions for the future in terms of ABM, but also in kind of like the B2B content space as well?
Well, I mean, if you asked me that question a year ago, my answer would be probably very, very different to today's answer. I think my prediction is that there's going to be a certain amount of, and we're going back to the AI point, we're going to be celebrating that, and we're celebrating the wins. We're going to be seeing there's so much technology out there at the moment that's coming to the space, and existing tech providers that are AIing their technology to make it really super interesting. And there's some, really interesting SaaS companies coming in. So I think that's super interesting to see how marketers can embrace that technology. But I think there will come a point when there'll be a level of fatigue that actually there'll be a slight pushback, and what will become very, very evident will be, where is the human side? And I did a piece the other day where I wrote, that a personalized letter, if I sent you a personalized letter and it arrived on your desk, that lands like a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
Because no one's doing that.
Yeah.
Right. So that personalized letter, or we had this great case study we did with a prospect that we were trying to win at the agency, and we, it was going on, the negotiations were going for a long time, and then the CMO left, a new CMO came in, and she didn't want to didn't want to sign the papers, and we thought, we've done so much work for you. It's such a shame to throw away all that work, and we could continue, to work together. So we found out that she was a crazy netball player. So we just did some research. We found that out. Then we kind of worked out, well, what size could she be? And so we guessed the size. We found this amazing supplier of professional netball shoes, and we sent her these netball shoes, and they actually turned out to be the right size, with a very personalized note talking about personalization, the importance of it, customers. And she called us up straight away to say, look, guys, I don't know how you did this. I don't know how you knew this about me. I don't know how you guessed my size, but if you can do that for me, I want you to do that for my customers.
Yeah.
So that's why the human side is so important. And account-based marketing ultimately is about me as building a partnership with you, and me getting to know you better than you know yourself, to be able to help you. So I think my prediction is, yes, to be a whole load of AI, amazing stuff, but there will be a desire to actually want to have more human moments. So I think there'll be a lot more human, like much more dinners, much more small meetings, much more, let's come together, let's sit down, let's talk. I think ultimately that's what's going to be a really interesting balance.
Yeah, so human to human sales, really. The AI can kind of do the heavy lifting on the admin stuff and things like that. Whereas anyone that's kind of thinking, and I believe that that's a trend I've seen as well, that people are kind of thinking there's a lot more focus now on in-person events, meeting, breakfast, dinners, so on as well. Yeah.
Maybe an idea for your company that just came to me for LinkedIn is, obviously IKEA has just started launching shops on the high street, right?
Yeah.
I think there's one on Piccadilly or Regent Street in London, and the queues were down the road. Maybe LinkedIn could think about opening LinkedIn stores. Yeah,
well, there was a thing in Cannes there, where they basically had the hotel in Cannes, the name escapes me now, the Carlton, where they had basically an open day of like people could go in and kind of take a video and upload it on via LinkedIn. It was a collab with Adobe. But yeah, I think there's definitely at trade shows and stuff like that thing with their LinkedIn photo. There's also in the London office now, there's a LinkedIn Experience Center where they do a lot of events for clients and stuff like that. So I think there's definitely that thing of human to human interaction. If COVID's told us anything, that's what really plays out in the end. And that's a really good example you mentioned about your customer as well. Like it seems like a no-brainer, but there's a lot of people that are not doing that. Like just doing that little bit of research, that's probably going to have more of an impact than trying to fine tune your attribution model, I would say, personally speaking.
And also, if you're looking, because the buying group has just exploded now, right?
Yeah.
You can't buy paper clips without having 6 people involved, right? And nobody can use a corporate credit card without getting their hand chopped off.
Yeah.
And also, when you're trying to engage with these companies, you've got to engage with the C-suite. So the CTO, CEO, CMO, CFO, CIO, they have to be involved now. They weren't necessarily always involved before. But if you want to engage with these people, they're not reading emails.
Yeah. No, it's true.
And they may not be on LinkedIn. They may or may not, or they may be on a little bit. So you've got to think, well, how do I reach them? How do I talk to these people? So you've got to think of really, and to go back to the point about our creative team, you've got to come up with really creative ways.
Right. Yeah. Definitely.
People that my wife complains about me. No, I never answer the telephone. Right. So you could cold call me until the earth freezes over. I'm never going to answer the phone because I just don't answer my phone. But if you send me a WhatsApp, I will answer you straight away.
Yeah, it's true. It's people are engaged in different.
Find the channel.
Yeah, and everyone has a different channel, I guess, as well, of things that they accept. But I agree with you about the personalization part. If you know the person and you send them something, it can definitely land really well. So just to wrap up, Declan, if an audience is either an organization or somebody personal that are looking to kind of get it, they work in B2B, they see this as an opportunity, what would be the key piece of advice that you would give them in order to kind of building either whether it's for their company or whether it's for themselves? What would you say in terms of the business impact that it's had and also the personal impact as well?
What's the impact it's been on me
how you would encourage them to start being more present, and like just some examples from the impact from you personally or for your business as well.
Yeah, well, I think obviously if I answer the second question first, I think the impact has been transformative in terms of on the agency I work as a CMO, but also on me as an individual. The fact that so many people can learn from what I share, that they, my inbox is full of lovely notes from people saying thank you for that or that, and I get asked loads of questions that I go to the trouble of answering and stuff, and I make sure I answer. I share lots of advice, and so that kind of community, which going back to the human side, is so it's important for me. I think it's important that if I've learned, I want to share that. So that's number one. The direct impact of the work that I do then on the revenue of the agency is huge. That a very large percentage of the work that we generate comes through either the work we do through our podcasts, the work we do through our social setting, the work we do through our publishing, whether it's my account or other accounts in the company. And so the impact is huge. And I think that won't go away. I just think it has changed. You've got to get a bit clever, a bit savvier. You've got to be careful about using AI to kind of write your posts, etc. And I think then just the last thing there, your question there, Marcus, about what advice I give to somebody or to a company, I would ask them to look at perhaps what their peers or competitors are doing.
Yeah.
What is it they're doing? And if their peers and competitors are doing something, you got to ask yourself the question, why are you not doing it?
Yeah.
And if you're in accounting and you see that, you're in Ernst & Young, you see PwC are doing amazing stuff and you're not, then you need to ask yourself the question, well, why? Because they must be doing it for a good reason. So I think looking at what your peers and competitors are doing is really important to try to get a sense for your market. Then number two is look for a couple of easy wins. Get like I said before, get a couple of people who'd love to come on board and just support them and be very encouraging to them and give them everything they need and the time they need to do this. And then just learn. And then once you just take baby steps, do a little pilot, take baby steps, show what works, encourage people. The word of mouth is, as you know, one of the most powerful marketing machines. Let that work.
Yeah. Great. Clint, thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you
to talk
for having me.
Thanks.